has just been so good for the Gold Coast. It feels like we have a reinvigorated nightlife, especially for the racing scene. As a Gold Coaster, it used to suck to have to go up the Sunshine Coast to go watch the night races. But I just feel like it is so perfectly placed here on the Gold Coast with our nightlife scene to head to the races. But down your neck of the woods, no one does it better than Moonee Valley. Do you get to go to many of the meetings?
Yeah, well, funny story. My first part-time job was I was a glass boy in the parade ring, the parade bar, I should say, which is right next to the parade ring at Moonee Valley. So, it was a job my brother did, and it was a job that my dad did as well
No
back in the
way.
70s. So, I've spent plenty of time at Moonee Valley, and yeah, the night racing is spectacular. It's spectacular, and if you ever get the chance to go to a Manikato, that is just the peak of night racing, I think, anywhere in Australia. And I'm looking forward myself to get the opportunity to actually go to the Gold Coast and get a taste of the night racing up there because, once I saw that idea float around, uh, especially even with the Magic Millions through the summer, whether that became a bit of a twilight night meeting, I'm all for it. But Moonee Valley, I couldn't agree more in saying that it's the top tier night racing.
Yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, yet the Gold Coast has really taken off. I don't think a lot of the young kids know that it's here and you can start your night there, end up in surface just a stone's throw away afterwards. Like, it is the perfect formula, but I think, it hasn't reached that Moonee Valley level of popularity yet. But as more of these great races come through, obviously, like we've got this Friday night with the 2-year-olds, if we can get more happening around Magic Millions time, we obviously, when we got rained out for the first Magic Millions and it got moved to a night race, that was huge. It was so much fun to be down there on course, and I would just love to see that, particularly in summertime. Elite vibes. But when we were off camera before, we were talking only a little bit about the form in this Magic Millions 2-year-old race, but I think we are both pretty dead set on seeing Isti Star go around for Paul Shaler. You actually said that she was getting tipped all throughout Victoria too.
Yeah, well, that was last start. It was I heard from multiple people about a filly going around at Ipswich and won well, won very well. So anytime there's young stars on the rise doing things right across the country and they get to come and compete for $1 million and Prince Tycoon also
Your guy.
and a horse that I absolutely loved watching run on debut down here in Melbourne and yeah, just so much left in the tank, I believe, with that horse. So I'm expecting a big improvement. But the fact that these young horses and these owners and the trainers from all over the country have a chance to race for $1 million in May is fantastic for racing.
It really is, and it's such a great kick-off point for what is going to be a huge weekend of racing all around. We've obviously got the Doomben Cup being run on Saturday up here as well. It's going to be a huge race as a whole, but the headlines all week have just been dominated by the Pride of Jenny versus Antino clash. But Blake Shinn is looking to go for a history-making Doomben Cup. Mick, talk us through it.
Yeah, I think Blake, I think when I was digging through the weekend's form, I think the first thing I noticed with regards to the Doomben Cup was I watched last year's replay, and I was reminded of that emotional connection that Blake Shin has with the Doomben Cup, and it's a link that I think the fans only kind of truly hit home for last year, when he won on Bois de Jean. And that victory came exactly 10 years after he saluted on streamer for his friend, his mentor, and a legendary trainer out of Sydney and Guy Walter, who tragically passed away just days after winning the Doomben Cup back in 2014. So, this weekend he's got that emotional edge, but it's his hunger as well. You spoke about a history-making Doomben Cup. He's looking to join the likes of Jim Cassidy, Kerrin McAvoy as three-time winners of the Doomben Cup. He skipped the skipped the Doomben 10,000 to ride in this race. He's got that amazing connection with Antino as well. This is just setting up for a Blake Shin, Tony Gollan masterclass, if you ask me. It's almost written in the stars.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's certainly no doubting that Blake Shinn is arguably one of the nation's most informed jockeys at the moment. And he just has this ability to pull a rabbit out of a hat, but particularly on this horse, we only need to look back at his Toorak win and then obviously the Hollandale win also. What this pair can achieve together and the trust that they have, that affinity is worth so much, and I truly believe that we are going to see Blake Shinn join the world's best jockeys in this huge Doomben Cup feat.
Absolutely. I think when you blend, as I said, emotion, focus, the form of the horse, and just the fact that it is a serious horse, it is setting up for Blake Shinn to just go bang. And yeah, I'm very much in their camp when it comes to this Doomben Cup, and it's, as I said, I feel like that emotional edge can really make a difference in any sport, not only just for jockeys, but when you're bringing in, a little bit more of a purpose than you normally do in a race, and there's that extra, the fire in your belly, and you partner that up with the world-class jockey that is Blake Shinn. It's gonna be tough for any of those horses trying to knock off Antino in the Doomben Cup.
Yeah, like you were saying, that fire in your belly. I've been speaking to my father-in-law a lot about this recently and what drove him so much to have the success that he had during his career. And he always said it was his wife, Maureen, and obviously Luke, my partner. But he just said when you were just so focused on winning, you could see gaps that you could never see before. And it's just like everything in a race would open up, the heavens and the stars, and everything would happen for you as a jockey when you were just so dedicated and committed to winning. And I think Blake Shinn, he is over and above committed to winning this race. But our interstate raters are looking to put a halt to Antino and Blake Shinn's dominance over this race. There's been plenty of headlines, but our sign ace warning signs are blaring, particularly from Pride of Jenny. Now, Mick, you did say before that you are all Team Antino. Give us your 3 points as to why you are sticking with him in this race.
Yeah, I'm in the Antino camp. It's quite clear. No questions about it. I think, even if you set aside the Blake Shinn factor and the connection he has with the horse, this horse has been building beautifully for some time now. And, with the home track edge, he's earned his spot as the favourite. I think the Hollandale win showed me exactly where he's at, and that's right up with the top tier of Australian racing. But there's one thing, no matter how good you are in a Group 1, it always comes with warning signs. But that recent form, the home track, and the Blake Shinn factor, they're just three things that are standing out to me. And in any case, those three things together is very hard to beat.
Yeah, most definitely. The only concern initially for me was barrier 11, but then you look at the way that this horse runs, particularly on a tight turning track like Doomben, I actually think that this is going to benefit him in the long run. He can't afford to be stuck in traffic. He needs that momentum, and I think that is just going to be key in him winning this race. But Pride of Jenny looks to upset it all. What do you think the warning signs are coming from her?
Yeah, well, I think Pride of Jenny's always a warning sign in any race. I think barrier 1's a gift. I think her last win was full of heart, but that was at the mile in open class where she was clearly superior to the horses in that race. 2,000 metres plus, she's beaten a combined 2 horses home in the last 2 attempts. So I'm backing her to run bold, and I'm backing Craig Newitt to get out in front. And but yeah, something tells me she's going to be feeling the pinch and be under siege at the furlong. And I think or if you think about a horse like Lindemann, who's probably going to be looming on speed, or even might battle for that lead too, I think it could get sticky for Pride of Jenny. And I don't think this is her race. But in any race, if Pride of Jenny's in it, she's a chance if she shows up and shows her best.
Yeah, I don't think we can ever completely discredit her, but I am there with you. I've got a lot of question marks about this. She certainly didn't fire over the 2,000 metres in the Australian Cup. She was, like you said, impressive last out, but who was she really racing against? And the biggest question mark for me is barrier 1. Now, on a normal day, this would be ideal for her, particularly at Doomben. She can jump in front, dominate. But with the way that the track is, it's currently at a soft 5, which is great considering the weather that we've had previously. But Doomben isn't our best draining track here in Queensland. Now, this race is obviously later on in the card. How chopped out is it going to be up that running section that she's going to get? Now, should she jump and lead the way that she normally does, I'm sure Froggy can choose whichever lane that he wants to choose and get a good run. But That's the biggest question mark for me. I know she does like a little bit of giving the ground, but if that's completely wrecked, I don't think Pride of Jenny is going to get a good run, particularly when there are so many good horses looming just behind her. Now, Mick, I want to know, outside of these headline horses, obviously we've got Faulkner Park as well. What are your thoughts on him?
Look, Faulkner Park's definitely the biggest red flag and I guess the biggest warning sign for Antino. I think the Archibalds are airborne. And this horse could be flying the flag for them through some pretty big weeks and races through the Spring Carnival. I think they had him in rare air last year at this exact time, at this exact carnival. And there's no reason that they haven't, nailed that this time around in their prep, just like they did with Sunshine in Paris. You said that the Archibalds are very particular with this staff and making sure that they tick off every box. And I think the confidence of these two this week alone says it all. And then you add Ethan Brown, who I now rate as one of the best jockeys in the world, and I mean that. He's so far up the rankings right now with his ability, and you've got to consider Faulkner Park as a serious threat. It's ticking all the boxes. Is the Q22 the grand final? Maybe. Is the horse good enough to beat these in a Doomben Cup? Absolutely. I think it's the major warning sign this week for Antino, and it's going to be a cracking race between those two, I think, in the finish.
I think so too, particularly seeing how he actually ran in the Hollandale. I didn't rate him on those heavy conditions, but he was just excellent and really put it to Antino. And I think he's going to be a serious contender in this race, like you were saying, as well as his stablemate Bois d'Argent. Obviously, we cannot discredit him. He is on the title defence. He's just a very consistent performer for an old boy. He does very well. Now, Mick, outside of all of these horses, is there anyone in this field that you have your eye on? This is just such an open race to me.
Yeah, there is one that sticks out quite clearly, and I might be a little biased because it's one of my favourite horses. The outsider's Kovalica for me. I think, up to 2,000 metres is a tick, beat home Royal Patronage, Pride of Jenny and Evaporate with no weight in a Cox Plate. Just last year, J-Mac, tick, Waller, tick, Hollandale Run, tick, and, you're left with a verdict of being a massive warning sign. I think Kovalica's a big shot. And, the run in the Hollandale as well was fantastic. I just thought, I know that Faulkner Park probably looked the better in the closing stage of that race, and they were all chasing Antino, but a lot can happen in just a couple of weeks, and I think Kovalica might have that Chris Waller polish and can definitely be a contender.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I can't believe we didn't speak about this off air, but I was going to say Kovalica for this section too. I think particularly, when we consider it the horse on paper, a lot of people would naturally overlook him. He hasn't won since the Queensland Derby 2 years ago, but he always races up there and about. We certainly can't knock his runs as of late. He had a really good run in the Cup. He ran elite in the Epsom. Is it the J-Mac effect that's got us all? He was 14 into $8 once acceptances were out. Is this horse actually going to be super competitive against the likes of Pride of Jenny? And was he just up there and abouts in the Hollandale because of the heavy conditions and he's a very seasoned galloper? But the Chris Waller and J-Mac effect, I'm with you there. I can have this horse as an each-way play and certainly not regret my decision.
Yeah, it's definitely a horse that I don't look too much at the results and, where the horse has finished in a lot of these key races. This horse always runs well. It's had some bad luck. But I think, I love the Hollandale run. I think it's a great lead in, and J-Mac probably had a pick of a few of these, I believe, being as good as he is, and he sided with Kovalica and has to be considered. Has to be a major warning sign, and I'd be surprised if Kovalica misses the places.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I actually thought the same thing. I thought in my gut James would obviously ride one of Waller's horses, but I thought for sure he'd be going Lindemann. So to see him pull the Kovalica rein, that this horse must have something going on there. Or, I even listened to Nev Morgan speak yesterday on Sky Radio, and he was saying everyone just overlooks this horse and no one actually appreciates the company this horse constantly runs in, and he's only going to be wanting further and only be getting better as he heads towards a Q22. So we're going to get a real marker of him in this race, and you can't not have a play, I think.
Absolutely. Totally with you.
Now, back down your neck of the woods, you have your eye on some very interesting imports making their debut at Sandown.
Yeah, I think, with major racing kind of, taking off up north especially in Queensland, I think these Melbourne race cars can start to look a little bit skinny. But if you know me or you've been following along the last few weeks, I love trying to find an import and how they handle the new conditions. And, last weekend there were two great examples. We saw Sir Delius for Waterhouse and Bott went out and won, and now looking towards a Melbourne Cup, and of course Limbs Kosciuszko for Dan Marr, who you and I were uh, keeping a close eye on. Two very different horses from different parts of the world, and yeah, both trying to make their mark here. But this weekend at Sandown, I found another import who I'm keen to follow, and that's Bright Stripes, debuting for Mark Walker and Ben Gleeson, who runs the stable down here in Melbourne for the powerful Tiakau. His Irish form reads really well. He's placed in behind Diego Velasquez, who was once a Cox Plate favourite. So, and Mutasarif as well, which is a multiple stakes winner over in Ireland. So the form's, strong enough to justify, well, probably strong enough to justify their purchase of this horse. But definitely caught my eye. And yeah, when he came into the market, I was a bit shocked to see that he was a little bit out in the market. I guess what I want to ask you is, as someone who's worked in, the racing industry and has seen imports come in from right across the world, how this learning process just must be so different for each horse. There must be imports who come over and are just, straight away exactly how they're going to handle turf, how they're going to handle traveling to the races, how they're going to handle race day conditions, all the above. And then there might be some who are just, you've got absolutely no idea for up to 12 months.
Yeah, it really can be such a gamble and, like you said, a learning process. Typically, as a rule, in my experience with Annabelle, obviously she is queen of the imports. She does it so well, and I think the horses really do like her training style, where she puts, a lot of work into them and is really on that TLC side of things with hard work, but a lot of good recovery. And the horses, you will never, ever see horses more bubble wrapped than Annabelle Neasham's horses. But in saying that, as a rule, most of the time we would never expect them to be up and performing in their first preparation here. It's such a huge acclimatization process. And that's my biggest query for Bright Stripes in this race is he's come over at a very tricky time to try and acclimatise. Obviously, this change of seasons. He's a Northern Hemisphere horse. They're coming into their summer, so everything's beautiful, up and about. He'd be getting his spring coat, hopefully some dapples, and the feed and the hay is getting to be such a better quality. But then he comes down here and he's heading to Victoria, where you guys are, like you were saying at the start of the episode, it's so cold all of a sudden, adjusting to the feed and the tracks. The tracks shouldn't be too different, I would imagine, but as a whole, it is a very awkward time for him to be transitioning, whereas from my experience up here at the Eagle Farm stable with Annabelle's team, the horses are acclimatised really well in Queensland. I think that bit of heat, and we have a variety of tracks up here. Eagle Farm can tend to be a bit of a harder surface. You head over to Doomben, it can be a bit softer, and our tracks, they all do play differently. And you look at the diversity of the imports we've had. Obviously, she's had great Group 1 success with the likes of Zaki, Bois d'Argent, top ranked. They were all UK horses. And down to the lower scale, we had Space Tracker and Extraordinaire. They were two that were in my barn. But of those last two, you couldn't pick any more different horses. Space Tracker, he was a beautiful guy. I do have a big soft spot for him. He's one of my favourites. He just was such a dude. You could do anything with him. Nothing ever fazed him. He'd be up at the main barn and you could literally let him out and have a pick like he was a dog. Like he would never even turn a hair. Whereas Extraordinaire, when she first came over, she was so highly strung. She needed a lot of love. You couldn't take her rug off without there being a drama. You couldn't go into her feed bin without there being a drama. But now we moved her down to the quieter barn, which we had the luxury of having two, and she just thrived off of that environment. Just two handlers, everything was nice and quiet. She went on to win a listed race in Sydney following that slight change in her routine. So there are a lot of factors when it comes to these imports, but I'm going to be leaving Bright Stripes out this time because I think, he's only had the 3 trials at Cranbourne. He hasn't left the facility yet. That awkward change of season, I think it's going to be a big learning curve for the whole team. I certainly don't doubt him, further ahead, but One that I actually do have my eye on is Samarco. He's a German Group 1 Derby winner. He's raced against the likes of Rebels Romance, Plus 2 Carousel. He's another one who was first up for Kieran Maher this weekend at Sandown. But I do have higher hopes for this horse and I do have bright stripes. I don't know what it is. But yeah, the acclimatization process as a whole is just no horse is the same, and it'd make all of our jobs a lot easier if it was. But yeah, well, you wish you could pick and choose.
Definitely. Well, I guess that explains maybe why the stable has been pretty patient with Bright Stripes. As you said, it can take well over 12 months to properly adapt. And, even if, sixth or seventh this weekend, I guess they're going to learn plenty right from the morning, as soon as they get to the stables, right into the end of the day. As you said, recovery is so
Exactly.
important. So hopefully, Bright Stripes shows. I'd love to see the horse show something this weekend. I guess you never really know. But yeah, hopefully going into the spring, the Tangerine have got another one they can start to enter in some nicer races, because the form, as I said, behind a Diego Velasquez, who was an early Cox Plate favourite, it's pretty good form. It's pretty good form, and those Irish horses, they're tough. They're very tough.
They are. You certainly can't knock, the first up form in another country. Like, look at Via Sistina, her first prep here. We were all blown away by her, but then, it isn't the same for all of them. Unfortunately, they are not robots. So I think the horse deserves some forgiveness should he not fire first up the way everyone hopes. Now, I know you're very fired up about this topic, Mick. There's been a lot of talk from the VRC with some interesting news around the Melbourne Cup prize money. Talk us through it.
Yeah, well, the VRC is reportedly looking to. You've heard this. I think if you've got any interest in racing, you might have seen this headline kind of pop up. But yeah, they're looking to strip money from the All Star Mile of any race to boost prize money for the Melbourne Cup, and they're obviously navigating a very public kind of financial crisis, I guess you could call it, in recent years. It's not just, something that's just happened. It's been something that the racing community have been aware of for a while. And, let's not forget as well, the All-Star Mile was created to rival the Everest, which hasn't worked. And it's not even a race that's, exclusively run at Flemington. So, it only races at Flemington once every 3 years. So maybe PRC's request over its funding, I think, even more questionable. With Racing New South Wales, Peter Volandis, and the potential of an unlikely $5 billion war chest, after the sale of Rosehill coming into play. I think that's why such, these solutions, they seem so rushed, and it seems like panicking almost. Um, you know, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit here and unpack the depths of the issues that are happening at the VRC, but you know the race itself, the Melbourne Cup, it sells itself on its history, it sells itself on its prestige, and it's a powerful spectacle in itself. And I think there's so much more to that race than cash. So it feels like this is less like strategy and more like uncertainty to be thinking that changing a bit of prize money is going to get Joe Bloggs and John Citizen to get down in the races.
Yeah, look, I think I might get lit up in the comments for what I'm about to say, but I genuinely don't know. Obviously, inside of racing, we all get so amped up with these big prize money races, the Everest, and just it is, so sparkly and it's great for the industry. But if you're not in racing and you already don't care about racing, if I tell you that there's a $20 million horse race, are you going to go to it still? I don't think I would. If I had no care for the industry, I don't care how much these horses are running for. I don't care if it's the richest race in the world. I'm not interested, point blank. There needs to be more done outside of the racing and the prize money to generate the general public's interest. Obviously, it's great for the racing industry. We're in a cost of living crisis, and I don't think that trainers, owners, staff, no one can afford for prize money to go down. But at what point are we, like you said, we're expediting resources to try and boost something that is already so popular and it sells itself? We have a week named after the Melbourne Cup. We have a whole spectacle that encompasses the entire of Australian culture. I don't think that, another 2 million in prize money is going to change the prestige and the spectacle that is the Melbourne Cup.
Absolutely. You just look behind me here. There's Melbourne Cup. There's Far Lap. I think just as I said, the race itself, the stories that have come from this race, the prestige, the spectacle,
Mm.
it sells itself. And as I said, this is not about strategy. This to members, and I'm a member of the VRC, looks like solutions that are full of uncertainty and even panic. And this
Yeah.
isn't solving any problems, changing the prize money. In fact, I think signs of panic only create further problems. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for racing in Victoria. As I said, it's not something new. This has been around for a few years now. The uncertainty, the disgruntled members, and yeah, I just think they've got it all wrong in terms of finding a
Yeah.
solution for bringing those amazing crowds. For years, they had 100,000 people going to Oaks Day on a Thursday at Flemington. So, are those days gone? Has culture changed? Are people not as interested in the fancy kind of side of racing that these clubs are going for? And in a
Mm.
result, they have to pay. And the way that they do that is they bump prices up of products like your beverages and your food and your entry tickets. And
Which is just counterproductive in the climate we're in now.
exactly. So, yeah, it's increasing the prize money in the Melbourne Cup in order to solve what seems to be a financial crisis is, in my eyes, not a good move at all.
I'm curious, Mick, as a member of the VRC yourself, if they had come to you and said, instead of taking the prize money from the All Star Mile and the Australian Cup and putting it towards boosting the Melbourne Cup prize money, if they said to you, we're going to utilise these funds to subsidise the cost of the general public attending the races, which will then in turn boost our overall turnover, would you be happy with that result, or is it still the prize money isn't the issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what the members of the VRC have been looking for a long time is a little bit more decisions and that are favouring the member. And for a family to go to the races, it's not a cheap day. And it used to be a
Mm.
day that for years it was a day that welcomed people from all different backgrounds, all different classes. It was something that people could afford to go to, and it was something you could go to as a family. Those days seem to be well gone. So, the more that you introduce policy and decisions that are member focused rather than, rather than just focusing in on those big days or those, as I said before, there's a lot of fancy stuff going on at the races that doesn't actually appeal to too many people. It might appeal to the cameras and it might appeal to the newspapers and social media, but the races needs racing fans. And going to
Hmm.
start getting more racing fans back to the races, start with looking after the member.
Most definitely. Like you said, racing needs racing fans. There's only one way to get a fan hooked, and it's to have them come, enjoy the day, not break the bank, and want to come again next week. It's the only formula that is going to work. So I really hope things change with the VRC. But change is a hard word in racing oftentimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it'll happen. I've still got faith. I've still got faith that it can turn around and because there's only one solution. And, as we said, the solution of boosting prize money in a race that sells itself is not going to work.
No. Well, now that we're all fired up, let's talk about Hong Kong. We have the final Group 1 of the Hong Kong racing season, the Champions and Charter Cup. Voyage Bubble is looking to become just the second horse in history to take home the Hong Kong Triple Crown. Between him and Dubai Honor, where does your heart lie, Mick?
Look, I think if these horses bring their best, Dubai Honor takes it out for me. I think you'd love to see the Triple Crown. Actually, yeah, I was having a look at the field. It's actually quite a good field. I'm quite interested actually in the Hayes runner, Ruby Lot, I think you
Mm.
pronounce it. Very interesting runner. Hugh Bowman's obviously persisted with this horse and he's been on it right since the start. I think the first time he rode it was over 1,000 meters, and now stepping up to the 2,400 with the same horse. He must really think that with the breeding lines with Rubik that it must be able to get out over further. So Outside of the stars, there are some interesting stories, but geez, I would be surprised if Dubai Honor was beaten. I think, and I think they're going to have the horse right, but these tracks are funny in Hong Kong. They can be really hard and fast, but yeah, Dubai Honor's been there before, knows what it's like.
Mm.
Yeah, Group One racing in Hong Kong doesn't get much bigger.
But for our local mate, James McDonald, he's having a huge weekend. He's obviously here on the Gold Coast Friday night, up to Doomben Saturday, and then over to Hong Kong Sunday. But he has such an affinity with Voyage Bubble. He's Hong Kong's champion miler. The biggest question mark, I suppose, is that 2400 trip, which
Mm.
is a distance untested by a lot of these Hong Kong horses. So that's why, for me, I am sticking with Dubai Honor. Obviously, he's well tested, like you were saying. He has a lot of experience in Hong Kong. Won the Tancred, ran really well in the QE. He just obviously that quick turnaround time, things didn't exactly go to plan, but he's always just such a consistent old veteran. 2400 is his peak. William Haggis won't be cutting any corners with him. Izzy Paul was saying during the week that he's absolutely firing, living life in Hong Kong, but it is a bit hot over there, back to that acclimatization with the European horses. But my heart's with Dubai Honor in this race. It'd be great to see one of the locals, like you're saying, Rubilot, Cap Ferrar,
Mm.
or even Voyage Bubble get this, particularly Voyage Bubble for that Triple Crown, just the second horse in history to be able to do it. But it is a huge feat, and it hasn't been done by many for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I think the last one was River Verdon in 93, 94.
Mm.
But yeah, look, this Triple Crown seems a lot more attainable, despite the fact that, it's 1600 meters, then 2000 meters, then 2400 meters. These horses actually get a bit of time, but I think the races kind of are over 5 months, maybe the three races. So,
Mm.
makes that kind of that Triple Crown a little bit more interesting and looks very attainable. And geez, you'd love to see Voyage Bubble do it. It's anytime horses and trainers and jockeys are making history and rewriting history, it's fantastic for the sport. But yeah, totally in the Dubai
Mm.
camp. I think 2,400 big tick.
I'll be intrigued to see who gets Hong Kong Horse of the Year after this. Obviously, Kai Ying Rising's well in contention with 4 Group 1 wins to his name. But if Voyage Bubble gets this, he'll equal him for Group 1 wins. So if you could choose, are you team Voyage Bubble or team Kai Ying Rising for Horse of the Year?
100% Voyage Bubble. If Voyage Bubble can tick off the Triple Crown, I think absolutely 100% solidifies Voyage Bubble as Horse of the Year. Absolutely
Mm.
100%. And I'll be shocked if Kaying Rising is named Horse of the Year. His time is
All right.
coming. His time is coming. You
His
know,
time is coming,
he's
but
won four Group Ones, and
he needs more on his CV. Kai Ying Rising, I say that for.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, as a whole, from Friday to Sunday, what is your highlight of the weekend?
Ooh, great question. Oh, it's got to be the Doomben Cup. I know it probably sound boring, but it's one of the better Doomben Cups that I can remember. I think in terms of the aspects, the interstate aspect, the Antino story, the Blake Shinn story, the rise of Faulkner Park, the Archibalds are on fire. There's just so many different angles and exciting stories that no matter whoever wins or whoever runs well, and if Jenny can get over the line. I heard Kira Mara on Racing Radio this week. He sounds pretty confident. So, and I know, you got to take that maybe with a grain of salt because he's sending the horse up there. But, geez, it's going to be a good race. And if Jenny can get it done, it'll be massive for the Victorians.
Yeah, I'm with you. Doomben Cup's going to be my highlight for the weekend. Like you were saying, just even the Winter Carnival as a whole, I feel like this is one of the first years in a long time where every Group 1 race is so layered with stories. And it's just everywhere you look, there's action, there's a storyline here, there's a storyline there. It's a really open, great betting race, the Doomben Cup this year. And I'm going to be trackside and I cannot wait to see all of the action unfold.
Very jealous, very jealous. You had a look at the weather yet? What it's doing?
Supposed to be good.
Good.
Supposed to be. We've had sunny skies all week, so hopefully it stays that way.
Lovely. Very jealous.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing these results unfold and then being able to dissect everything top to bottom next week.
Yeah, well, we'll catch up Monday.
Love it.